And former Manhattan prosecutor is with me now. Jeremy, good to see you. So let's start here. Graham, Perdue, Loeffler, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn recommended for charges by the special grand jury. What potentially could have informed the DA's decision to forego those, to not charge or seek charges against those four?
You know, the investigation itself and the decision or recommendation by that special grand jury, which one of your colleagues correctly noted does not have the power or the ability to vote an indictment, was really telling, because you do not want to go take a case that has that reasonable cause to believe a felony was committed, a much lower standard. If you can't really get past that bar, take that case, present it to a grand jury that can vote an indictment, and then when that defendant would have a right to testify, present evidence in his own behalf, and be heard with his counsel, try to prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a dangerous step. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And with all the political headwinds here, she did not want to do this, and then turn out she's fighting cases which she very well may lose.
And 13 of the 16 fake electors were not indicted. 3 ultimately were. Do you expect that cooperation influenced the decision there, and not just for those 13, but for others potentially who were recommended to receive charges or seeking of charges and then were not? How much does cooperation play into it?
Yeah, I think there very well could be cooperation, and I think there very well can be further cooperation down the road. I don't think that would be out of the realm of possibility. As we've discussed before, when you're a fake elector and your response is, hey, you know, I was doing this on the behalf of the president and his people, his attorneys, his campaign staff said this was okay and move forward. That's why I did this. So I think just in their own testimony, if there are co-defendants, that is going to be damning for the we'll call them the top people like Meadows and Giuliani and the former president. But formally, they very well may cooperate as well, because as we know, 5 years is a long potential sentence, and that would be the minimum potentially if they're incarcerated. They don't have to be, but there's a lot of exposure, so it would not shock me if they cooperate.
Is it too soon for the people who were not ultimately indicted to breathe the cliche sigh of relief?
I think so. And there was certainly a big, despite the bravado you're hearing from some of these people and the chest pounding, I stand by what I did. You know, they're innocent, obviously. They have not been proven guilty. They haven't even had a case presented to a grand jury that can vote an indictment. But you better believe it's a type moment, because there is still criminal exposure, very much so. And if people start to flip and start to talk, there's evidence that may yet to be known by DA Willis that she could ultimately present to a grand jury. So they're not out of the woods. Whether it comes to fruition and there's an indictment, only time will tell.
Let's turn to Meadows, and I want to separate this into 2 questions. So first, Judge Jones has rejected the request from the former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, to remove the state case to federal court related to the election subversion investigation. On Meadows only, his request, what's your view of Judge Jones' finding that it didn't meet the, as said, quite low standard for removal?
Yeah, that threshold is pretty nominal. It is damning. It is difficult. It's very, for Meadows, it's crushing. But I don't think anybody should really have expected otherwise. I think most people who follow this and try to follow the law, whether you're someone who's really knowledgeable about the law or just learning it as you go, it was a reach. And the judge pointed out, the end game here, the goal of affecting this election in the state of Georgia, and even some of the things that Meadows admitted himself were damning and really turned the tide against him. But that's assuming the tide was even formed at some point. So I'm not remotely surprised, and I think the decision was right. I also believe that this is a sign, even if not directly, to each and every other person who wants removal, president included. And remember, there's an issue about whether the president or the former President Trump is actually an officer who could seek that removal regardless.
And there's my second question. See, you anticipated what I was going to ask you, and you already gave me the answer.
I think I've been working with you for too long.
Yeah, I think you have. You understood where I was going. Jeremy Saland, I appreciate you getting up, and most folks at home don't know this, but on short notice for us. I thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right.
All right.